This is Lauren Burke. This is Lauren Live. And breaking news, breaking news. So Donald Trump apparently at about 1:45 today, March 5, 2026, fired his Department of Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem. He apparently is going to give her some other position with a very strange title, but I'll get into that later. A new position that has never been heard of before. She's put out a thank you note to the president. Thank you for appointing me as the envoy for the Shield of the Americas. What is the Shield of Americas? Nobody knows. Apparently, a new position that nobody's ever heard of. And Markwayne Mullin, who is a U.S. Senator from Oklahoma, would take her job apparently on the 31st. Of course, he has to be confirmed. But this is all very interesting. This happens after a week of Kristi Noem getting really skewered and roasted by various members of Congress, including a Republican, Senator Tillis from North Carolina. That was a absolute roasting, and then there was more roasting yesterday about a contract for $200 million. Actually, specifically a contract for $120 million. And that roasting apparently must have had some effect on Donald Trump, because the report out there is that he was asking about whether or not it was a good idea to fire Kristi Noem, and apparently he thinks it is a good idea. I'm going to run 30 seconds of the open, and I will be back very shortly. To get back to this breaking news, and it is breaking news. Markwayne Mullin has been named the new Secretary of Homeland Security after Donald Trump fired Kristi Noem at about, looks like 1:50 today, in a Truth Social post. And that Truth Social post is certainly quite packed with information. This is kind of not completely surprising, because Kristi Noem was, in fact, kind of on the hot seat for a while. That had been said before. And this firing was kind of one of these things that was out there, who'd been bubbling up every now and then. And certainly after the Minnesota incidents, there was sort of a feeling that there was a lack of confidence there. And so now she's being fired. But again, this entire week she had been skewered in Congress by members of Congress. There was all sorts of roasting all week long that went on. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard may be right, Mike. It may be next, Mike. So I will say that this is not that surprising, because she had three particularly embarrassing moments in these hearings this week. And those embarrassing moments were quite something to watch. Quite something to watch. They involve contracts to people who were closely associated to her, and that she could not really explain. And this is the first, I think this is the first cabinet official to go the way of being fired. But, they're trying to really sort of smooth it over by giving her some sort of made up title job that is really strange off to the side. Rick Wilson tweeting, hey, everything Trump touches dies. And Rick Wilson is always there to say that when something like this happens. But at any rate, this is the communication from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, from earlier today. This was probably about 1:45ish. The news started to break. And this is, of course, on the right wing platform, Truth Social. I am pleased to announce that the highly respected United States Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, Markwayne Mullin, will become the United States Secretary of Homeland Security effective March 31, 2026. The current Secretary, Kristi Noem, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially at the border, will be moving to the special envoy for the Shield of the Americas, will be moving to be the special envoy to the Shield of Americas. No one knows what that is yet, and that is a new title and apparently a new position that has never been in the U.S. government before. Our new secretary initiative in the Western, apparently this is our new secretary initiative in the Western Hemisphere. We are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland, serving 10 years in the U.S. House of Representatives and 3 in the Senate. Markwayne Mullin has done a tremendous job representing the wonderful people of Oklahoma, who I won all 77 counties. He loves to brag about, when he won a state, which of course Oklahoma is a very red state. So remember, he would have to pick somebody from a red state. He has to pick somebody that has a Republican governor who will, of course, appoint a Republican senator into that position. Apparently, the rules in Oklahoma are that you have 30 days to do that. But let's look at some of the reasons why Kristi Noem was fired this week. Some of the likely reasons, and that can be found in the exchange between Kristi Noem and Tom Tillis earlier this week in a Senate committee where he really went in on her hard.
So why am I disappointed with Secretary Noem? Because we're not going after enough people who did this damage at the expense of running numbers that Stephen Miller wants out of the White House. We just want numbers. We want 1,000 a day, 6,000 a day, 9,000 a day, because numbers matter, right? No, they don't matter. Quality matters, not quantity, quality. And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. What we've seen is innocent people getting detained that turn out are American citizens. I could talk about the culture that's been created here with Stephen Miller aiding and abetting. I heard first reports that he was the one that said it was a domestic terrorist situation where 2 people lost their lives in Minneapolis.
Now, this 2 people lost their lives in Minneapolis, of course, is Megan Good. Sorry, excuse me. Let me run him so I can take a drink.
I've heard that report. Maybe you can refute it. I don't know that we'll have time for you to respond because I'm giving you a performance evaluation here. I'm not looking for a response. And I'm saying, Ms. Noem, that time after time after time I've been disappointed. But before I get back to looking at the vicious people that did this damage to these families, I want to talk a minute about FEMA. You have a policy right now that anything over $100,000 has to go through your desk for approval. I asked my staff, because I'm a management consultant, I don't try to do cheap shots in here, but the facts do not lie. This is your administration for FEMA response. This is President Trump's first administration. Which one would you like to have? If you're a state that has a $60 billion disaster, your biggest disaster in South Dakota that I can tell that when you were an elected official was about $500 million. So 1/100th of this single storm where thousands of people are hurting in North Carolina and you're just barely catching up. This is what competent FEMA leadership looks like. This is what incompetent FEMA leadership looks like. And people are hurting in Western North Carolina from the most significant storm they've ever experienced.
And of course, once again, the breaking news is that the Department of Homeland Security, the director, Kristi Noem, has been pushed out of her job. We can deal in semantics about whether she quit, she was fired. I think she was probably pushed out. Apparently, the reporting out there by some really good sources is that President Trump was calling members of Congress with regard to asking about whether or not he should fire her. And of course, now we find out that she's been moved to some position that has never existed in the government before. But let's continue with why this may have happened. So this is Republican Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina earlier this week.
This is what we need more of. I'm convinced you can't do it. If you're requesting a review of $100,000 and up, then it begs the question, why? Why would you be involved in that? Why would that be a policy? And in a minute, I'll ask about some people that are involved, some special government employees. Why are they involved in it? Thank you.
Senator,
no,
that $100,000 only had to do.
I will hold the clock until I finish.
Okay.
The bottom line is I've done the analysis. And you can say whatever you want to. I've worked with the Democrat governor. I've worked with the Republican governor. I've worked with fiscal research. We have people contacting my office now to get the information to better understand the failure of this department. You failed at FEMA. And in fact, if I get to it, actually, why don't I cover this right now? The Homeland Security Act of 2002 expressly prohibits the Secretary of Homeland Security from restricting or diverting FEMA resources from the agency's mission. based on your disaster response, the chart that I just showed you, I have reason to believe that you're violating the law, either knowingly or unknowingly. So I'll be asking and getting a submission to the record, submitting a question for the record, what the total amount of FEMA reimbursements are currently being held by DHS.
So what he does here is he talks for the entire 10 minutes. Earlier this week, this was Tom Tillis talking the entire 10 minutes, not allowing her to respond until after he was done. And you can see that Kristi Noem is not interrupting him, which to me is surprising because typically what she does, she tries to talk over the member. She didn't do it with him.
Awaiting for final approval. Held by DHS, awaiting for final approval for an agency that you should not be obstructing the disbursement on. I'm going to give you time to answer to it under penalty of perjury so that we can get it right. Now, going back to Minneapolis, why can't we just say we made a mistake? I will ask you one question, if you can just give me a quick response. Who does Tom Holman work for? You or the president?
The president.
Okay. Why is that? Because I believe the president recognized that you weren't getting it done in Minneapolis, and you're putting us further away from pointing to this. We're beginning to get the American people to think that deporting people is wrong. It's the exact opposite. The way you're going about deporting them is wrong. The fact that you can't admit to a mistake, which looks like under investigation, is going to prove that Miss Good and Mr. Pretty probably should not have been shot in the face and in the back. Law enforcement needs to learn from that. You don't protect them by not looking after the facts. Not only should the FBI be investigating it, but every single law enforcement agency in that jurisdiction should be invited to it. So our law enforcement officers do not have this pall cast upon them. One of the reasons why ICE officers are having threats, and damn the people that threaten ICE officers, because so many of them are doing a good job, is because you've cast a pall on them by acting like we should investigate things differently. Officer-involved shootings have a formula that we should go through every time. And we're not going through that formula. As a matter of fact, in Ms. Good's case, I think that they were even saying that maybe there wasn't even a need to do it in the DOJ. I hope that that's changed.
Okay, so there is this discussion in the chat, understandably. You know, a lot of people, of course, defining this as a firing. Kristi Noem being fired, the Department of Homeland Security secretary. No, well, she's pushed out of the job. She's out of the job. Markwayne Mullin apparently will be named the next Homeland Security director. Trump wants him in effectively the 31st. That's really not his decision. That's the decision of the U.S. Senate. But Kristi Noem does maintain a job. Apparently, she's going to have some new job nobody's ever heard of that's never existed before in the government, Guardian of the Americans or whatever the heck it is. I'll get the correct title. So for our chatters out there, thanks for joining. Please hit the like button. She loves Fan TC. Hi, Lauren. How you doing? She loves Fan TC. For the chatters out there, totally understand saying that she resigned and still works for the Trump administration. That's Vince Jackson's comment. That is true. I don't know whether the resign part is true, but okay. She does still work for the Trump administration. That is accurate. According to the communications between the president and Noem as of like 1:42 Eastern today. Again, this is March 5, 2026. This is Lauren Live. This is Lauren Burke. And Kristi Noem, the breaking news, Kristi Noem has been fired as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Again, one of the reasons that may have happened is some earlier exchanges this week with notably Republican Senator Tom Tillis. He is not running for re-election, but he's from North Carolina. And this was some hot exchange this week in a committee where this generally does not happen, where a Republican member roasts any member of the Trump administration's cabinet.
But I'm telling you, it was a civil rights review. I saw your frown. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But originally, Blanche said there wouldn't be an investigation. Folks, law enforcement, we've got to have their back. We've got to make it clear when they make a mistake, then they get corrected for it. But you don't walk away from it, and you've done it too many times. Now, Secretary, I read your book last week. And honestly, some of the parts of it impressed me, but some of it distresses me. And I'll give you a good example of one that does. The passage where you talk about killing a dog that was 14 months old. I train dogs, all right? and you are a farmer, you should know better. You should know that if you're going out to a hunting lodge and you're putting pheasants out and you're putting dogs out, you don't take a puppy out there. A 14-month-old dog is basically a teenager in dog years. You decided to kill that dog because you had not invested the appropriate time in training, and then you have the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson about tough choices. It's in your book. We could play it if we had time. At that same lunch hour, you killed a goat. And you killed the goat because you said it was behaving badly. You are a farmer. You don't castrate a goat. They behave badly. You should have probably done that before. But my point is, those are bad decisions made in the heat of the moment, not unlike what happened up in Minneapolis. We're an exceptional nation. And one of the reasons we're exceptional is we expect exceptional leadership. And you've demonstrated anything but that in the time that I've seen you responding to the emergency in North Carolina and across the Southeast, and acknowledging when mistakes are made and speaking too soon for the expedient of social media or whatever it is. I'll leave you with this, Ms. Noem. I'm expecting answers to Charlotte's Web. I requested it a month ago. That was one of the investigations in Charlotte, 20 minutes from where I live. All I asked for, if it had to be anonymized, was information so that I could determine if your hit rate is right. I want to find more of those people, and I want to detain fewer of the others. And Mr. Chair, in my remaining time, I have a lot to go. But I want to submit this letter from the Office of Inspector General that...
You can see Kristi Noem is getting roasted by Thomas Tillis. This was earlier this week. I believe it was Tuesday. And now she's been pushed out of the job of Department of Homeland Security. Hi, Damon, Blissett, nice seeing you. And now we get another person who will be Markwayne Mullin. Apparently, Donald Trump has nominated Markwayne Mullin, who is a senator from Oklahoma, who effectively is someone quite like Kristi Noem in the sense that he typically backs up everything that Donald Trump says. So not surprising. And of course, there's a Republican governor in Oklahoma, so there'll be another Republican pick, a placeholder for that position when it becomes vacant. The Republicans have 55 members of the U.S. Senate. The other thing I would point out here is that this is the rare roasting of a Trump administration official by a Republican senator. This happened earlier this week. It made the news. It went viral. It did all that. To answer your question, she loves fan TC. What is she writing? I think a lot of the witnesses are told to scribble, to write, to look down, to do things that are kind of taking the attention off the moment when you're getting roasted like this. What can you really do? I know she wasn't taking notes on the dog getting killed that she killed. So, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But she's just nervously writing. At any rate, this is the last few seconds of the roasting from Republican Senator Tom Tillis.
Cites 10 different instances under Ms. Noem's leadership where they've been misled and not allowed to pursue investigations that they think are critically important. Does anybody have any idea how bad it has to be for the OIG in this agency to come out and do this publicly? That is stonewalling. That's a failure of leadership, and that is why I've called for your resignation.
Now that, ladies and gentlemen, was pretty hot, and it again got a ton of attention earlier this week. Yesterday on Capitol Hill, there was more roasting. Kristi Noem was in front of, I think it was House Judiciary Committee. She did Senate Judiciary, then House Judiciary back-to-back days. And that was, of course, predictable on some members like Jamie Raskin, that there was going to be more roasting. And in fact, there was.
It's been 13 months since you took office and more than 5 weeks since 2 American citizens were shot dead in Minneapolis. Renee Good was a 37-year-old poet, about 20 years younger than you are now, and like you, both a devout Christian and the mother of 3. She was on her way home from school drop-off when she encountered an ICE operation, and one of your agents shot her dead, shot her 3 times. She bled out in the driver's seat of her car after your agents refused to let a doctor or EMTs approach her. You expressed no sympathy for her family and no regret for her killing by an ICE agent. You ran a smear campaign against Renee Good. You called her a domestic terrorist.
Once again, this was yesterday on Capitol Hill, the House Judiciary Committee. This is Jamie Raskin of Maryland. These were predictable questions, of course. What had happened after Megan Good and Alex Purdy had been shot is various officials in the Trump administration with absolutely no evidence claimed that they were domestic terrorists and that they were somehow representing a threat to law enforcement. There was no evidence of that. And then we had on video both of the shootings of the people, and it made no sense to me. If you're going to lie about something, you might want to lie about something that's not on video that everybody can see. So at any rate, that was an absolute disaster yesterday for Kristi Noem. There's nothing she really could say about it, and sat there for most of that, not saying anything. So that was a pretty big disaster yesterday for her. And again, today we find out through a post on social media from Donald Trump that she has been pushed out of her job as the Secretary of Homeland Security. Of course, this happens weeks after the confusion in Minneapolis, but let's listen more to Jamie Raskin, who is a member of Congress from Maryland.
Alex Purdy was also 37 and, like you, a federal worker. He was an ICU nurse at a VA hospital, outstanding in his job, providing comfort to many of our vets in their final hours. He was standing on a street corner filming your agents as they roughed up peaceful protesters. Americans have a First Amendment right to record government agents in public places, as 8 different federal circuit courts have unanimously found. But your agents pepper sprayed Alex Purdy for helping a woman that they had pushed to the ground. Then they threw him to the ground. They beat him up. They stripped him of a lawful firearm he had never touched. And then, after confiscating it, they shot him dead with 10 bullets. Before his body was even cold, you launched a smear campaign against him.
Want to recognize Pam Entertainment in the chat. Yeah, Pam, it does look like this is the moment where Kristi Noem is out of the job of Department of Homeland Security, but a new job apparently has been created, one that no one has ever heard of before, and it has a very interesting title. And that is a job that no one has heard of before, that has been apparently created in the government for Kristi Noem. I mean, what is there, a rule that she can't find a job in the private sector? I don't know. But it is called the Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas. The Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas. That is the new job that Kristi Noem is going to have. But the breaking news is that she will be out as a Secretary of Homeland Security.
Using the same language, asserting without evidence that Alex Purdy had committed a, quote, act of domestic terrorism and intended to kill law enforcement. This disturbing video tells the true facts you tried to cover up with propaganda, and we can play it only because other brave Americans used their phones to capture the actual reality of this horror.
Deadly ICE-involved shooting out of Minneapolis. The Minneapolis police chief says a woman was killed after being shot in the head by an ICE agent.
No! Renee Nicole Good was a 37-year-old U.S. citizen and mother of 3 who moved to Minnesota just last year.
It was an act of domestic terrorism.
Breaking news in Minneapolis and another deadly shooting involving a federal officer in that city. This video shows the incident from this morning with officers surrounding a man before taking him down and shooting him during a struggle. Officials later said the man had died. Minneapolis city officials said the man is a 37-year-old white male, a resident of Minneapolis. They also say he is believed to be an American citizen and that he was a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry.
This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
Whoosh.
Madam Secretary, you've provided no evidence to back up your defamatory lie against either of these American citizens. There have been 3 homicides in Minneapolis in 2026. Your agents committed 2 of them. Rather than work with state and local authorities to solve these homicides, you barred Minnesota's investigators from the crime scenes. You're denying them access to all the evidence that you have about the deaths of their citizens. It smells like a cover-up, and it makes me wonder who the real domestic terrorists are. But you didn't just lie about Renee Good and Alex Preddy. In dozens of cases, federal judges have found that your officials lied to them in court. A Reagan-appointed judge rejected the testimony of your acting ICE director as, quote, disingenuous, squalid, and dishonorable. Another judge called the affidavit of a top ICE official, quote, the sorriest statement I've ever seen, adding she was shocked when she saw it, and that if you were asking to get a warrant issued on this, I'd throw you out of my chambers. Here are a few more examples of the many scores we found in the case books. Yesterday, you insisted under oath to the Senate that you follow court orders, but that's not true either. Just last month, your lawyers were forced to admit that you had violated immigration court orders more than 50 times in 10 weeks. And that was just in New Jersey, one of 94 judicial districts in America. In Minnesota, Judge Patrick Schultz, a George W. Bush appointee, concluded, quote, that ICE has likely violated more court orders in January of 2026 than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. And while you make a daily mockery of our courts and our Constitution, you're treating the billions of dollars our colleagues showered on your department like a personal slush fund. You budgeted an astonishing $220 million for media consultant contracts.
Now, the media consulting contract situation came up in the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday and in the House Judiciary Committee. And I did a video this morning before all this happened on the clips of all of that. And that was quite something. I'm going to show a little bit of Congressman Joe Neguse from Colorado with regard to that contract, $200 million contract that went, part of which went to the spouse of Kristi Noem's communications director, according to Congressman Neguse, and she did not deny it during her testimony yesterday. So we're talking $200 million in tax money, part of which was used on an ad campaign. That is what Congressman Raskin is talking about right now.
So you can star in self-promoting photo shoots and lavish ad campaigns like.
And this lavish ad campaign, by the way, the way that we knew about all of this, other than the fact that it's all public information, we knew about this because ProPublica did an investigation on it and found out that there was this government contract out there for some friend, apparently, of Kristi Noem, and it was a no bid. There was all sorts of stuff going on in terms of not knowing, you know, what this was, who this was, and they couldn't find a website for the company that got the 220 million. Actually, website for the company that got the 120 million $220 million contract. It was part of the 220 million for this whole ad campaign that she's got with her riding on a horse. So firm tied to Kristi Noem, this is ProPublica, back in November of 2025. Firm tied to Kristi Noem secretly got money from $220 million DHS ad contracts. The company is run by the husband of Noem's chief DHS spokesperson, or comms person, and has personal and business ties to Noem and her aides. DHS invoked the emergency at the border to skirt competitive bidding rules. Wow, I didn't know that part. DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, invoked the emergency at the border to skirt competitive bidding rules for the taxpayer-funded campaign. Of course, this is all tax money. You know, I don't need to tell anybody. I mean, this is all tax money. So $220 million worth. And typically with this type of size of contracts, you know, you're bidding, you've got a bunch of companies competing for something like that.
Office in more than 5 weeks since 2 American citizens were shot dead in Minneapolis. Renee Good was a 37-year-old poet, about 20 years younger than you are now, and like you, both a devout Christian.
Oh, sorry. It started from the beginning. I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to go to Joe Neguse. Actually, I'm on the wrong video. Sorry. Let's go to where we were. They're holding up the placard of part of the big ad campaign with Kristi Noem sitting up on a horse and Mount Rushmore in the background. This is where your tax dollars are going for $220 million of promoting Kristi Noem sitting on a horse.
This one of you riding horseback at Mount Rushmore, which was shot during last year's government shutdown. You're living rent-free in the official waterfront residence reserved for the commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard. You spent $172 million to buy not one, but 2 luxury jets for your travel. And now you're using taxpayer funds to lease a 3rd jet, a $70 million luxury 737 MAX with a queen-size bedroom in the...
In the chat, Ridge Runner, you're right. The fashion show is in fact over. Again, the breaking news today at about 1:45, Donald Trump posted on social media that he was changing personnel with regard to the Department of Homeland Security, moving out Kristi Noem and putting in Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. He is set to start on March 31. She is set to depart, like, I think right now. She's got some odd title for the new job that she's got. Special envoy for the Shield of the Americas. Special envoy for the Shield of the Americas. This is yesterday on Capitol Hill in Washington. This was a hearing of the House Judiciary Committee. This is Congressman Jamie Raskin going through all the expenses of Kristi Noem.
Back a deluxe serving bar and 4 flat screen TVs, a big, beautiful jet paid for by the big, beautiful bill. Yesterday, under questioning the Senate, you said you plan to refurbish this jet to make it into this kind of airplane, which is what's actually being used for deportations in order to save the taxpayers' money.
Look at this. I mean, this really is some pretty interesting corruption here. I mean, if you had this under President Obama, any president, George W. Bush, President Obama, President Biden, here we are, President Trump, this would be explosive news. And this is one of the reasons why you have a tax on Iran, to get people's attention off of some of this type of absolute terrible spending of tax money.
In other words, you're saying that's actually a deportation plane. But wouldn't it have been cheaper just to buy a deportation plane in the first place? It's like buying a Rolls Royce to turn into a Metro bus. I was almost prepared to buy that story of how the jet was both for executive travel and mass deportation. And then I heard about an airborne episode of entitlement, arrogance, and contempt that I could hardly believe. Apparently, when your special blanket, your blankie, was left on one of the government jets and not transported over to the new one, your special government employee, Corey Lewandowski, chivalrously stepped forward to fire the pilot midair, a 2003 Coast Guard Academy graduate and distinguished U.S. Coast Guard commander in Air Station, Washington, D.C. But then he had to be rehired immediately because there was no one else who could fly the 2 of you on the rest of the journey back home. Secretary Noem, you're flying high now, maybe even a little bit too close to the sun. But with all these free planes and houses and pilots, you've traveled a long distance from your actual job.
Well, it's just interesting because this position, remember that Donald Trump campaigned on, obviously removing illegal immigrants out of the country and they're committing crimes and this, that. She and the Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, have been the main spokespersons of the Trump policy on what he campaigned on when it came to immigration. And so without her there, this is going to be a very interesting ride. It's not to say Markwayne Mullin is going to take his foot off the accelerator, because I can assure you that he's going to be much like Kristi Noem. I don't think he's dumb enough to lie about things that and put together government contracts that are corrupt. It's just a terrible idea when this money can be traced into the millions, $100 million, $200 million, and everybody sees it in the records. It just, you can't get away with it. Gilda Gilbert, Noem should pay back the money from the taxpayers. Actually, should pay back the money. Remember, there's an inspector general back there that wants to investigate all this that Kristi Noem has been blocking. I'm going to get to that in a minute after we finish with Jamie Raskin from Maryland.
Things you should be doing as head of Homeland Security. Your agency is charged with protecting the homeland. It includes FEMA, TSA, the Secret Service, the Coast Guard, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, as well as ICE and CBP. Yet you've hollowed out the national security mission. You redeployed thousands of people responsible for tracking terror financing and fighting cyber threats to go work on your mass immigration roundup. You reassigned to the roundup agents working a key national security probe into Iran's terror financing, paralyzing that investigation. And to run what's left of Homeland Security's ruined terrorism prevention office, you actually installed a 22-year-old intern whose chief listed qualification for the job was that he had participated in a model UN club his junior year of college. Through FEMA, you're supposed to provide disaster relief to our communities. Yet last summer, as floods devastated central Texas and killed 135 people, including 25 girls and 2 counselors at a Christian summer camp, you withheld crucial support, including search and rescue teams, for 72 hours.
This is an absolute roasting. All he's doing is just reading all of the things that have happened on her watch. I mean, he's not really having to actually put anything together here other than what was reported in the news as it was happening. And when you do that, I mean, it's pretty devastating. She, of course, and you're right, life of bluegrass music. I actually really like bluegrass music, and particularly Bill Monroe. And funny thing, I was looking at the Osborne brothers the other day singing Rocky Top, but actually life of bluegrass music, you're correct. She's not going anyplace. She is going to be the special envoy of the Shield of the Americas. We are going to find out at some point what that means. Sounds actually like a broader title than Homeland Security. And so we'll see what happens. She is not leaving the government. That is accurate. We will see where she lands. But before I go to Joe Neguse and this question of whether or not that contract was no bid, whether or not there was a competitive contract, but that whole thing is probably, that's almost probably prosecutable, but we'll go into that later. This is Jamie Raskin from Maryland. Again, today, the breaking news is that Kristi Noem has been fired as the director of Homeland Security. I should say pushed out. We'll say pushed out because the numbers, the messages online would indicate that she was pushed out. Markwayne Mullin's coming in and she's been given another job in the government. But there's been rumors for weeks, actually, that President Trump has wanted to replace Kristi Noem. So it kind of is in keeping with that.
Why? Those were 3 crucial days during which people drowned and died waiting for bureaucratic approval. You promised to use ICE and CBP to expel the worst of the worst, undocumented immigrants guilty of committing violent crimes like the people responsible for murdering the children of these angel families, these angel moms and dads who've joined us today. Instead, your masked agents have been indiscriminately rounding up any and all immigrants and citizens who your agents think look like they might be immigrants. They've arrested kindergartners, daycare teachers, and parents dropping off kids at school. They drag grandparents out of their homes in their underwear in sub-zero temperatures and rip children out of their beds in the middle of the night or use them as bait to arrest their parents.
Now, all he's doing, once again, is reading all the things that we've seen in the news usually from Minneapolis. A lot of that was from Minneapolis. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is really easy to do because there's been so much footage and so much video of it. And Mike, you're right. Yeah, they got Obama for having a tan suit. Yeah. Wow. The tan suit Obama thing is one of the silliest moments in the world. No drama. Obama had no scandals, which was pretty amazing. Wow, let's go. I'm just reading a few of the comments here. She'll perform private jets. The private jet is a interesting situation. Yeah, Pam, she's getting paid a lot. I think cabinet officials in the United States, probably something in the order of $175. I have to check the cabinet salary. Really, that issue of the contract is a huge issue. The $200 million contract going to the spouse of one of her employees, that is hugely problematic. Hugely problematic. I'm going to wrap up with Jamie Raskin and then get to the contract issue.
Just last month, your agents picked up Nurul Shah Alam, a severely disabled and nearly blind Rohingya refugee, lawfully in America, who didn't speak English. You claimed your agents dropped him at a safe, warm location. Again, not the truth. They dropped him off miles from his home in the dark at a closed coffee shop in sub-freezing temperatures. And now, because of this cruelty, this man too is dead. You have 250,000 employees and a budget larger than that of 150 countries. You command over 80,000 sworn law enforcement officers, more than the number of police officers in New York, Chicago, LA, Houston, DC, Las Vegas, and Dallas combined. On top of that, our colleagues have handed ICE an additional $75 billion by slashing funds for Medicaid, children's health insurance, and rural hospitals. Secretary Noem, your job is to protect the homeland, but the most precious possession that we've got in our homeland is our freedom and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that protect it.
Yeah, wow. So yeah, of course, the Department of Homeland Security is one of the biggest departments. And John Masterson, you're right. The money that she got is tax dollars. We should be paid back. I totally agree with that. God, $200 million. You know what we could do with $200 million? Definitely could pave some roads. You know, we could definitely pave some roads, fix some potholes in almost every city in the United States. Jeez. I mean, it's unbelievable. Let's get to the contracting issue. I had brought this up this morning and played Congressman Goose from Colorado with regard to this. This is a big thing, this contract. It had come up, Adam Schiff brought it up, Senator from California. And this issue of the contract and the contract going to a friend and all this was highly freaking problematic in my view. The fact that people think that they can get away with these types of things and that nobody's going to notice is pretty amazing to me, actually. Because this is all public information. It doesn't take much to find out about a $200 million contract. I mean, it's just not going to take you very long. And he got her on the record. He really, his entire questioning, the House members have 5 minutes. His entire questioning was about this, as it should have been. So I want to replay this again because this was quite fascinating to watch.
Secretary, thank you for being here. I want to discuss in greater detail the expansion of advertising in your department under your tenure. And I believe.
Again, this is yesterday on Capitol Hill. This is the House Judiciary Committee. This is Joe Neguse, the congressman from Colorado.
You testified regarding some of these matters yesterday in front of the United States Senate. In particular, I want to discuss the department's $220 million ad campaign. This is the ad campaign that featured you at Mount Rushmore. You're familiar with this ad campaign, correct?
I am familiar with it. It was an ad campaign that was.
I'm going to ask you some questions about it, Madam Secretary. So, as I understand it, this is a $220 million ad campaign. It's split between 2 contractors. One of those contractors got $143 million. That contractor is called Safe America Media, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That company is affiliated with a former political director of the National Republican Congressional Committee. Now, yesterday you testified, I think I'm quoting you right, you said, quote, or in reference to this contract, that, quote, it went out to a competitive bid. Do you stand by that statement?
It was a no bid contract where 2 vendors were.
It was a no bid
chosen.
contract.
If it would have been a.
It was a no bid contract. She gets sort of mixed up here. Go in the chat for just a second here. Life of Bluegrass Music. Because I'm into bluegrass music, I'm going to talk about this chat. Democrats Biden has never helped Ohio, North Carolina, and how many other states. FEMA money was given to illegals, a lot of nerve coming from these Democrats. Yeah, I don't know about Ohio and North Carolina specifically. Generally, every president, Democrat and Republican, there's usually no problem when it comes to FEMA money. I mean, that's usually not political at all. It was only recently when Trump came in that he started to not give money for disasters for blue states, namely Maryland was one of them. And that is rare. I don't think, in fact, more than rare, I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think any Republican president other than Trump has ever, gotten in the way of disaster money. I know North Carolina, you bring up North Carolina, there was some funny business that went on there, some slowness that was reported. I think under Biden, but I got to check that. I got to double check that. It wasn't something I specifically covered. As somebody who's in the nearby state of Virginia, hey, I mean, you probably have a point somewhere in there. And giving money to illegals, I mean, I tend to doubt that would be the case. Again, it has to be checked and verified. We live in a world of misinfo and disinfo. Got to be careful. Got to be careful where you get your information from. In Virginia, by the way, I don't know where you are, Life of Bluegrass Music. You might be in Kentucky, but you do know that Maybelle Carter and the Carter family launched bluegrass in Virginia. And in fact, there's quite a bluegrass festival here. But I digress. I digress. At any rate, yeah, this FEMA thing has never been political until now. But let's go back to Joe Neguse, and this government contract for this advertising was $200 million. $200 million of tax money.
If it would have been a no bid contract, if I'm using that correctly, it goes out to two different vendors.
Correct. So it was
There
not a
many
competitive.
media-
Let me try to explain
agency.
what the discrepancy, because a competitive bid is very different than a no competitive bid. And I'll just explain why. We know that your testimony yesterday, when you said, again, I'll quote, it went out to a competitive bid, is untrue. The reason we know it's untrue is because under federal law, your agency is required, whenever the agency decides to skip competitive bidding, to file a notice with the public explaining why. And in this case,
Right.
your agency filed a notice.
Right.
You're aware of that, right? Justification and approval for other than full and open competition. Your agency made a decision not to proceed with competitive bidding, and one of the contractors that got the award was this Safe America Media Company that received $143 million.
Many
Right.
vendors got the chance to look at that contract and to participate in it.
Well,
So that is why the two of them were
That's
chosen.
inaccurate, Madam Secretary. I'll read from the notice from your agency. Given the immediate action to significantly reduce illegal immigration and border crossings, DHS identified 4 companies. 4 of the hundreds of thousands of companies in the United States, you identified 4. One of those is this Safe America Media Company. Where is Safe America Media headquartered?
I don't know.
I don't know either, Madam Secretary. We can't find it. We can't find a website. We did find an address that's registered for this company. Do you know where that address is?
Is there a problem with this contract?
I'll
Because
tell you
was
about
done
it.
according to
Madam
law.
Secretary,
It
the
was done by career
address is
officials.
Yeah, this contract, this $200 million part of the $200 million contract, 140 million. I'm sorry, 120 million of it went to some company that doesn't have a website and was created 2 weeks before the contract. Oatmeal 5671. Greetings from Norfolk. I'm going to be in Norfolk on Saturday night at some sort of masquerade ball thing for the mayor of Norfolk, Kenny Alexander. So I'll see you down there, right? Norfolk, Virginia, one of the greatest cities in Virginia. We love it. Anyway, getting back to this, this is Joe Neguse going through the no bid contract, and this is your tax money, $200 million. This is pretty amazing.
Registered to a political
was
operative.
dollars that were
Madam
spent
Secretary, the
to
company,
inform
and then
people
I'll give you an
that the
opportunity to
laws-
respond.
Look,
The company is registered to a political operative in Virginia. Do you know, just by way of example, whether this company that received $143 million in taxpayer dollars, has it ever done work for the government before?
I don't know. I can't.
The answer is it has not. And do you know why we know that? Because it was incorporated 8 days before this contract went out. You want the American people to believe that this is all above board?
Yes,
that $143 million of taxpayer money just happened to go to this one company that doesn't have a headquarters, doesn't have a website, has never done work for the federal government before, and is registered apparently or attached to a residence from a political operative. And of course, one of the subcontractors of that contract, as you know, is a political firm that's tied to you back when you were governor of South Dakota. The reason why I ask these questions is that this is taxpayer money. And I presume, I don't know this for a fact, but Senator Tillis noted yesterday the way in which your agency is blocking the Inspector General from 11 different investigations that it is trying to conduct. I don't know if this happens to be one of them. I certainly hope it is, because eventually the facts will become public in this regard.
He's right about that. This is all going to come out. And this is going to come out in an investigation from the Inspector General. It's either going to come out when that happens, or it's going to come out years from now or next year when the Democrats are likely to be in control of Congress. But that information is going to come out. And these no bid contract issues and funneling money to friends and open corruption and, oh, we're doing it to a company that was created 2 weeks ago. That is stuff that people go to jail. I mean, this is like a big deal what he's going over here. And I'm really surprised that they weren't a lot more crafty. I mean, you could have had an open bid contract and it could end up with a friend, but why have a no bid? You do a no bid and you just hand it to somebody. That is way, way more suspicious. That's a gigantic red flag. Gigantic red flag. Let's listen to a little bit more again.
Is a political firm that's tied to you back when you were governor of South Dakota. The reason why I ask these questions is that this is taxpayer money. And I presume, I don't know this for a fact, but Senator Tillis noted yesterday the way in which your agency is blocking the Inspector General from 11 different investigations that it is trying to conduct. I don't know if this happens to be one of them. I certainly hope it is, because eventually the facts will become public in this regard. And there are serious laws implicated, conflict of interest laws, federal procurement laws, that I believe
All
merit.
followed, all done correctly,
What
all
was it?
done
All done
legally.
correctly.
14 billion impressions from that
yeah,
marketing campaign.
sure.
It was money spent in this country and in 8 different countries that illegal migration was coming from.
Madam Secretary,
Overwhelmingly
yeah,
effective.
we all
$39
understand the
billion.
argument that you've made, that somehow this ad campaign on Fox News of you at Mount Rushmore has led to millions of people self-deporting. You're
Why do you-
using
why do you think that
millions
they
of
did
dollars of
self-deport? Had they
taxpayer
not
money
known?
in this way. It is fraud, and ultimately, I think there's going to be accountability. And I yield back.
Yeah, that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be one of the things that comes up again and again with regard to Kristi Noem. I'm actually surprised that she wasn't sued by the family of Alex Preddy with regard to calling him a domestic terrorist, which there's no evidence of that been presented at all. And for those of you out there, I think I saw a comment in the chat with regard to Alex Preddy, and he resisted police, and that's why he got shot. I'm not saying you should resist police, but I'm not sure Alex Preddy should be shot dead for what we saw in that video. I mean, that was not cool. And there was some confusion, certainly, with the law enforcement folks, or the alleged law enforcement folks that were in the video. Again, we don't know who those people are. There's no verification that they're law enforcement. Okay, we'll play along. At any rate, the situation with Kristi Noem is that she was pushed out of her job as the Secretary of Homeland Security today by this Truth Social post by Donald Trump, which he writes that she will now be in another job in the government, something called the Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas. The Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas. Of course, nobody at this moment knows what that is. So that's something that, I suspect we'll find out about later in terms of details. Again, it sounds like a broader job than the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And maybe it is, who knows? But it does sound as if, when we say fired, okay, she was pushed out. I think most people know that in most jobs where it's a white collar job, people are eased out. Usually you're eased out. You're not just fired like somebody walks in like on The Apprentice and fires you. It's sort of a thing where you are eased out. And in this case, she is eased out in another job. So I will say, at least she's not leaving the government completely. She's still in the Trump administration. They created a position for her. What that means, I have absolutely no idea. No one seems to have any detail yet on exactly what this position is or what it will do. It is just called the Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas. I'm getting that the source of what I'm reading is President Trump's social media post. But there's been no information yet put out there exactly on what exactly that is and what that position is. At some point, we find out what that position is, and Markwayne Mullin will apparently be the new director of Homeland Security in the Trump administration starting on March 31. But this has been a very bumpy ride for Kristi Noem, as we saw in these hearings this week. I actually think the hearings this week may have been the decisive reason as to why she was taken out. So let me look at the chat again. Just checking out a few things. Let me see here. Life of Bluegrass Music. I'm just not knowledgeable on the Ohio thing, but if you're in Ohio saying that, you would know better than I would, because I'm not in Ohio. I drove through Ohio once. Beautiful state in the summer to drive through. I was driving to Columbus. At any rate, I don't know if FEMA aid went to it or not. That would be not good if it didn't. Again, this is our tax money, and this is why we have these agencies, to help other Americans. And Tony, Republican have been working on destroying America since yeah, I mean, there is a group of people that seem to be channeling the Civil War. I will definitely agree with that. And then they go back far, and we keep having the same issues over and over again. She's just beginning to get what she deserves. Yeah, we'll see if there's a prosecution, Tony, as related to this money, because that whole contract situation that's a big story. That is something that could have legs and could last. And everyone brought it up. Tom Tillis brought it up. Jamie Raskin brought it up. Adam Schiff brought it up. And then Joe Neguse, Congressman Colorado, brought it up. Like, everybody brought up that contracting issue. I'm trying to find, Adam Schiff was the one that brought it up yesterday. Again, this is all happening in great succession. But it really was the same line of questioning. And the last congressman, the one I just showed, was just really following up what he had heard on the Senate side the day before. He refers to what you said the day before. He's talking about what Kristi Noem said the day before in testimony about that $200 million contract and how it broke down. And to say he wasn't happy about it would be the understatement of the year. So that was that she should have been prepared by the time she got to the Senate side the next day. You would have thought she would have been prepared, but let's see what Becca Ballant is, this member of Congress that questioned her yesterday. Once again, this is some hot testimony. This is I totally forgot about this. The Cory Booker exchange. He calls her incompetent. I mean, I had missed this, so this will be the first time I'm watching it along with everybody else on this feed. But I heard that something hot had happened, but didn't have a chance to go back and check it out.
You're in charge of your agency. The buck stops with you, correct?
I'm in charge of my agency. What?
The buck stops with you.
Yes, correct.
And you had to swear an oath.
It's Cory Booker of New Jersey, U.S. Senator.
To the Constitution before you took this job, right?
Correct.
So one of the most sacrosanct ideals of our nation, enshrined in our Constitution, is freedom, is liberty.
Mm-hmm.
It is an idea that the government has a very high standard should they take away liberty and freedom from an American citizen. How many U.S. citizens has DHS detained as of last October?
Senator, if you're talking about detained and arrested, is that those that have been violating and obstructing our law enforcement operations? Is that what you're referencing? Because it could be hundreds and hundreds. We have faced violent riots across the country,
you are
specifically in Portland and in
the only
Minneapolis.
people you've detained are committing crimes, but you and I both know
No,
that's
I haven't
not true.
said that. I didn't
So
say
then
that. I
how
asked
many
which ones you were
people
referencing.
have you detained?
I can't give you an accurate number because we've literally detained and arrested many for those obstruction of law enforcement operations, and
So
also
public
others
records,
that had probable
let me tell you what
cause
my staff researched.
and then released
May
once
I
yes.
continue? Public records are showing that over 170 incidents of your agency unlawfully taking away the liberties and freedoms of American citizens. This includes 20 children, 20 American kids that your agency detained. How long can your agency detain an American citizen?
We don't detain children and separate them from their parents. Those parents have
But you're
chosen
telling me
to
under
keep their
oath
child
right now.
with
Hold on. I
them.
just want to be clear. You're telling me under oath right now that your agency has not detained American children.
Those parents have chosen to keep their children with them. We don't separate families
So-
like the
so
Biden
hold on.
administration
Let me
did.
continue.
We keep them
Let me-
together, and
let-
parents
please
have the
let me
option
continue.
on if they want
How
their child with
long
them
do
or not with them.
detentions last when you detain an American citizen? How long do they last?
We don't detain American citizens, and if there's probable
well,
cause.
let me give you, because you are not speaking truthfully under oath. Isaiah Pena Salcedo, a U.S. citizen living in California, was detained more than 70 hours, almost 3 days, even after he showed ICE agents his passport. My colleague, Senator Blumenthal, gave you example after example. He brought people here who had something else we Americans consider sacrosanct, our home, our property. your masked agents jumping out of unmarked cars have broken into considerable property damage occurring into American citizens' homes.
Now, he's going over Fourth Amendment violations, and he's proving, too, that there have been American citizens who've been detained by ICE. Typically, law enforcement does not, there's usually rules for different law enforcement agencies with regard to how long you can be detained. And usually it's not very long. And as somebody who dated a cop, he was telling me a few weeks ago that the detaining number for federal law enforcement is like 30 minutes or something. They either have to articulate that you are under arrest or arrest you, one or the other. They cannot detain you forever. This is very interesting you brought that up.
Case after case of this, and you sit here before me and claim the buck stops with you, but you don't even know the names of these individuals. I ran New Jersey's largest municipal police department. When my officers engaged in misconduct, you can be damn well sure I knew about it and I investigated it. And yet you have situations where your officers are violating the sanctity of people's homes, arresting and detaining them and holding their children. And you're acting as if you don't know about it and saying that under oath. Miramar Martinez, who is here right now, on her way to church, an American citizen going to church, not just to worship, but to donate clothing. Your officers shot her multiple times. The case was thrown out of court, and you represent here that you don't know about it. In New Jersey, are you aware of your officers' activities in places like schools? Are you aware of your officers' activities at our public schools?
Sir, we don't go into schools and do targeted law enforcement operations. We do targeted law enforcement operations like other agencies.
So you're
and law
telling me that
enforcement
ICE
do.
officers entered the grounds of a high school in Minneapolis? That's a fact. Elementary school children in New Jersey are terrified of your agents. When they came upon a school bus stop, they fled. Another school, a higher education, Columbia University, your agents reportedly lied to students, told them they were searching for a missing person to gain access to private spaces, to non-public areas of campus.
The Miramar Martinez incident that he brings up, which was out of Chicago, I'm going to put in the chat the story related to that. That was a terrible story involving a U.S. citizen, and that was, wow, that was bad. And that's why that came up. And she claimed at some point she didn't know anything about it, which was terrible. And that, I think she just couldn't answer because there is no answer.
Secretary Noem, these are kids.
Remember, this is Cory Booker, New Jersey Democrat. This is earlier this week. I believe this is Tuesday in the Senate Judiciary Committee.
They're terrified in our communities.
Sorry, correction. This was Wednesday.
How do you think that affects them when children in my state go running, fleeing, and often you all pursue children, throwing them to the ground, getting on their backs, putting them in handcuffs? I want to talk to you about this incredible empire of for-profit companies that are profiting at rates we've never seen, and the way you're using money. Let's drill down on the warehouses.
Here he goes with the money. This is he's probably going to talk about core civic. He's probably going to talk about incarceration. There's a whole incarceration industry behind this, where, of course, to make money in incarceration, you need bodies to put in places, in cages. And I have a feeling he's about to get into that.
The DHS has been buying over the last several months, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Are you familiar with the acquisition of a warehouse DHS recently bought in Roxbury Township, New Jersey?
Yes.
You are familiar with that?
Mm-hmm. I'm
Do you
familiar
know
that
how much you spent for it?
No, sir, I do not.
$129.3 million. Do you know how much it was assessed for in New Jersey?
Sir, we're purchasing centers across the country to build efficiency into our detention system.
Efficiency to
so that
me,
we
as a
can-
person who's run tight budgets before and had taxpayer dollars, you paid $129.3 million for a facility in my state that was assessed at less than half of that, at $62 million. To work for a president that says he's a great deal maker, I can't believe he thinks that you're a great deal maker. But what's worse than that is that the Roxbury Township Council, comprised entirely of Republicans, voted unanimously early this year to oppose that facility. My office tried to facilitate a meeting between DHS and local officials so that ICE could hear their concerns, yet DHS did not even respond. That is unacceptable, that you all would enter a town. You wouldn't even follow environmental reviews or have conversations with local officials about the resources, from emergency resources to fire resources and more, that you're going to pull down. You didn't even have a conversation. Secretary Noem, do you comply with court orders?
Yes, we do
Your
comply with
agency
court
complies
orders.
with court orders.
Yes, we comply with federal court
You were
orders.
saying under oath that you do, and yet we know in January the chief judge, Republican appointed for the Federal District of Minnesota, found that ICE had violated nearly 100 court orders since January 1st alone. In my state of New Jersey, last month, the chief of staff to Deputy Attorney General admitted in my state that in the New Jersey District Court that the government had violated 52 separate court orders, all involving cases where immigrants successfully challenged the legality of their detention. So this again is a constitution that you swore an oath to, and one of the most important ideals is that no one is above the law. You are violating the separation of powers, violating court orders, and routinely violating the civil rights of Americans. This is a reckless and out of control agency that you are responsible for. You seem to have no situational awareness whatsoever of some of the most egregious examples of Americans being completely attacked, violated, undermined in accordance with our laws by their own government. And this is what is phenomenal to me, is immigration was your president's number one issue, overwhelmingly popular with the American people. But now it's overwhelmingly unpopular. And it's not because you are deporting dangerous people that everybody here wants out of our country. No, it's because you're going into our schools. You're terrorizing our children. You're detaining children. You're arresting Americans. You're breaking into our homes. You're terrorizing our streets. You're violating our rights to peacefully protest again and again and again.
None of
and then
that
when
is
a court tells you
None
to
of
stop,
that is true.
and then when a court
You are
tells
trying
you to stop,
to impede
you
us
violate
from enforcing
judges'
the
orders,
law
not in
and
a
getting
partisan
dangerous
way,
criminals off of our streets
Republican-appointed and
so we don't have
Democratic
more
appointed.
families like the ones that are
Don't
sitting
sit
behind
there
me.
and tell me that
Lost
you are
their children. They're
responsible
gone forever.
for the running of your agency when you're not even aware. Either you are utterly incompetent or you are violating laws with impunity. You should step down from your position. If you don't, you should be removed by this president. And if not, Congress should impeach you.
So, wow. So that was...
I appreciate the encouragement.
That right there was no encouragement there. That was some roasting. That was absolutely some roasting by Cory Booker. Again, it went alongside what was said by Adam Schiff in the same hearing, which I believe was Tuesday, Senate Judiciary. And then yesterday, Wednesday, March 4, there was even more roasting. And then today we find on March 5th that Kristi Noem has been moved out of her job as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. That was an unbelievable roasting from Senator, U.S. Senator Cory Booker. And again, all that's really happening in these hearings is that they're just listing all the things that happened during her tenure. They're not really saying anything particularly new or anything like that. And the most surprising roasting, of course, came from the Republican Senator Tom Tillis, I believe in the same hearing. And so that was from North Carolina. That was another moment of surprise. Generally do not see that type of treatment from members of the same party as the person who is testifying. Well, at any rate, this is Lauren Burke. This is Lauren Live. This is breaking news today. And I think this is the first Trump cabinet official to be removed from their job since he took office once again for his second term in January 2025. Kristi Noem, Markwayne Mullin. According to the president's social media account, Markwayne Mullin will be nominated as the next Secretary of Homeland Security. There's been a lot that's gone on in this office because, of course, the president is hyper-focused on immigration policy. That has gone awry. Focused, I think, on Minneapolis, certainly because it's a democratically run city. He was not, thank you for subscribing, Stephen. He was not focused on the red states. I mean, you would think Texas would be one. Thank you, and thanks for hitting the like button as well out there. Really appreciate everybody joining, regardless of political persuasion, Republican, Democrat. Let's discuss what happened today, and let's discuss the $200 million that has come up in these conversations when Kristi Noem was questioned this week, talking about $200 million of taxpayer money with regard to an ad campaign that was reported on last year by ProPublica. The firm was tied to Kristi Noem and secretly got, $220 million in Department of Homeland Security ad contracts. And that, friends, is a huge red flag. A company that was created shortly before the contract went out and the money was deposited in somebody's bank account. And, when you look down at your check, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or anything else, and you see how much in taxes are taken out. I mean, as somebody who's lived in New York, as somebody who's lived in Virginia, as somebody who's lived in Washington, D.C., I am telling you, taxes are a lot. And it is not, Virginia was the best of the three, by the way, the lowest of the three. And it is not fun paying taxes. It's tax season right now. Hopefully everybody out there is getting a refund check. But those of you have to pay the government, and we pay the government before we even see the money half the time, of course, when you have a job. That taxpayer money is hard to come by. There should be scrutiny on every administration. I don't care who it is, Democrat, Republican. But when you spend $200 million on an ad campaign, that's going to be a red flag. That is it for right now. The breaking news, of course, Kristi Noem has been removed as the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security. This is Lauren Burke. This is Lauren Live. I have worked for 4 members of Congress on Capitol Hill in Washington. I've also worked in big media at ABC News, at USA Today. I've worked at the Hill newspaper. I have a Substack that covers the Black community in Virginia called Black Virginia News. I have been in another life a photographer for Associated Press. That was a lot of fun. And I have worked in media. I've worked in politics, and there's a lot going on, as we know, in politics. And I like to focus on money because that's something everybody can understand. And as I sign off, I think everybody should keep in their hearts the families of the 6 service members who were killed in Iran this weekend. Really sad situation. One was 20 years old from Iowa. And gosh, it's terrible to think about, 20-year-old passing away. I've got military in my family, as a lot of people out there do. And it really is amazing when somebody dies that young. It's really sad. And obviously something that rocks that family forever from this point forward. So that was a really sad thing. I want to thank everybody for listening and dropping in, and in a lot of cases commenting. I want to ask everybody to hit the like button. It's a really big help. Thanks a lot for hitting the like button. Thanks for subscribing, and thank you for watching Lauren Live. Even though you see Don Lemon at the start of this video, we're not really officially affiliated. I just met him in a hallway on Capitol Hill in Washington, and we're talking, and I made it part of my outro video. So he's a fun guy. I've never actually worked with him or anything, but I love his show. That starts at 5 o'clock today. I want to thank everybody once again for joining. This is Lauren Burke. This is Lauren Live. And I'll be back soon with something, probably something on the war, maybe the Epstein files. We'll see what happens next. Thanks.
Somewhere. What's going on? Thank you. Are you watching now?
Yeah. No, I was watching on the left, but it's excellent. I love it. I love the traffic's blowing up. You were in Brooklyn last night. Where?
I was in Bushwick.
Okay, I have my grandmother's house in Crown Heights.
Oh, yeah.
So when I saw you, I was trying to look at what the pizza place was to see where
As soon as we got there, someone recognized the pizza place. They're like, we gotta get out of here. Someone had
get out. It was great.
blown up our spot.
This show is freaking fantastic.
Thank you.
Love it, man. Love it.